Does baptism save? Does communion save? Do any ordinances save? I've got a wonderful verse that will help kind of fix this in your mind. In John chapter 6, verse 63, Jesus says, "It is the Spirit who gives life. The flesh profits nothing. The words that I speak to you are spirit, and they are life." Now, this is very important because this is the same discourse, same conversation, and same chapter where Jesus talks about communion. He says, "My body is true, my blood is true drink, and my body is true flesh." And that has led a lot of people. For example, the Catholic Church would say, if you don't take their form of communion, you can't be saved. There are many other denominations that say if you don't take communion with them, you can't be saved. There are many denominations and forms of Christianity that say baptism saves you. And what I'm going to argue is that those are clearly ordinances, because Jesus, in this famous chapter, John chapter 6, verse 63, says, "It's the Spirit of God that gives life." In John chapter 1, we read that you have to be born not of the will of the flesh, but born of God to receive eternal life. It's a gift of God. And the Spirit, the one who gives life, is in contrast to the flesh, the will of men, the work of men, what we accomplish, that profits nothing. And then Jesus says, "The words that I speak to you, they are the means by which God communicates to you his Spirit and his life." It is by believing in the gospel, what Jesus has done, and believing the words of Jesus. Now, I do want to talk about ordinances, and there's another verse that's really wonderful to help settle this in your mind. You remember back in the Old Testament, God gave an ordinance. Essentially, the children of Israel were being bitten by serpents. They were dying, and the serpents really represented their sin. And they looked up to what Moses was holding above his head, a bronze serpent. And they looked at that bronze serpent. It was a type of Christ. It was a type of sin bearer, and they were saved. But then hundreds of years later, in 2 Kings chapter 18, we read that Gideon broke in pieces the bronze serpent that Moses had made. Why would he do that? That was a great memorial of how God saved them. Because in those days, the children of Israel burned incense to it. They began to worship it. And just like God says in Luke chapter 22, verse 19, that communion is to be done in remembrance of Jesus dying for us, people elevate communion and baptism and worship it as salvific. The flesh profits nothing. It's the Spirit who gives life through the means of the Word of God.